The home on Snowden Drive looked peaceful, quiet, even picturesque in the spring sun. A red door, a trimmed lawn, wind chimes clinking softly in the breeze. But inside, there was blood. So much blood. When police entered the house that day, what they found would haunt them for the rest of their careers. A mother, stabbed and beaten. Her teenage son, lifeless, face down, still clutching a phone that never dialed out. And in the center of it all, the one man they never suspected, was the one they had just welcomed home. This is the story of Darren Jenkins, a 25-year-old man who stepped out of prison and straight into his mother's house. Just 6 days later, she and his little brother would be dead, killed by someone they loved, someone they celebrated, someone they believed in. But what no one saw, what no one could have seen, was that Darren Jenkins didn't come back home to rebuild his life. He came home to finish it. She threw him a welcome home party. He gave her a funeral. In this deep dive documentary, we'll take you into the fractured heart of a North Carolina family. We'll walk through every hallway of that house. We'll listen to the 911 calls, analyze the mind of a killer, and uncover the chilling timeline that led a mother to her final moments, still believing her son could change. We'll examine the question that has frozen an entire community in disbelief. How do you raise a monster without ever realizing it? He didn't wear a mask. He didn't run. He didn't even lie. In fact, he confessed in the most terrifying way possible. He simply stood there, waiting, watching, as the truth unfolded all around him. What happened on March 31st wasn't just a crime. It was a betrayal, so cruel, so intimate, that even veteran detectives broke down at the scene. You are about to hear things you'll never forget. The sound of a teenager's final voicemail, a mother's last journal entry, the cold silence of a killer's stare in court. And through it all, we'll keep asking the question that nobody can answer. Why? Why did Darren Jenkins destroy the only people who ever stood by him? And what was hiding behind that blank face when he walked into that courtroom, calm, uncuffed, and completely unbothered? This is not a story about crime. It's a story about the illusion of safety, the horror of trust, and what happens when love opens the door to evil. This is the story of Darren Jenkins. Wilson, North Carolina. It's the kind of town where time feels slower, where neighbors know each other by name, where weekend cookouts and church on Sunday are just part of the rhythm of life. Here, the days are quiet, the streets feel safe, and the thought of a double murder, of a mother and child, it doesn't just shake the town, it breaks something in it. At the center of this town stood Dana Vanessa Jenkins, 50 years old, a nurse, a mother, a woman of deep faith, known for her laughter, her generosity, and the kind of love that could hold a broken family together. She raised her children in that red brick home on Snowden Drive, taught them to pray before dinner, taught them to never give up on anyone, not even Darren. Friends described her as unshakable, a woman who believed that even the most shattered soul could be put back together. She believed that because she had to, because her oldest son had spent years falling apart. Then there was Darren Cox, 15 years old, Dana's youngest, a quiet, respectful, soft-spoken teen, the kind who held doors open for strangers, who dreamed of making it out of Wilson one day, going to college, becoming someone his big brother could look up to. He was the light in that house, a boy full of potential, a soul so gentle his friends say you could tell he didn't even like killing bugs. And now, he's gone. It didn't happen all at once, of course. Tragedy rarely does. In fact, if you look at their lives just 1 week before the murders, it looked like a turning point. Darren Jenkins had just been released from prison, 3 years behind bars, a record that started in his teens, breaking and entering, stolen weapons, malicious conduct. But this time, Dana believed it would be different. She picked him up at the gate, brought him home, cooked his favorite meal, fried chicken, cornbread, sweet tea, and told everyone who would listen, "My boy's back, and he's gonna get it right this time." She told her church. She told her co-workers. She even posted on Facebook, "Proud of my son, new chapter." But no one saw what was building behind his smile. The house on Snowden Drive may have looked like a place of healing, but inside there were fractures no one wanted to acknowledge. Quiet arguments, unspoken tension, glances that lingered too long, doors closed a little too hard. And through it all, Darren, just 15, was stuck in the middle, loving his mother, trying to connect with a brother he barely remembered. A brother who had missed birthdays, missed games, missed years. Darren was back in the house, but he wasn't part of the family. Not really. And deep down, they all felt it. This was supposed to be a story about redemption, a second chance, a mother's faith strong enough to defy statistics, defy doubt, defy danger. But the truth is, sometimes love isn't enough, and sometimes the person you open your door to isn't looking for a new beginning. He's looking for a place to end it all. Coming up, the dark past of Darren Jenkins, the crimes that led to his incarceration, the signs his mother refused to see, and the moments leading up to the bloodbath on Snowden Drive. No one is born a killer. They become one, piece by piece. To understand why Darren Jenkins did what he did, we have to go back, not to the crime scene, but to the beginning. To the places where violence doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sits quietly in the corner of a broken childhood. Darren was born in 1999, the first of Dana Jenkins' 3 children. His father was gone before he could walk. Some say prison, others say he just vanished. Whatever the case, Dana raised Darren alone. She worked nights as a nurse, struggled to pay bills, but she never missed a PTA meeting, never missed a Christmas, never stopped believing she could raise a good man. But Wilson isn't kind to single mothers, and it was even less kind to young boys without fathers. Darren was angry, even as a kid. By age 7, he was getting into fights at school. By 10, he had been suspended twice, and by 13, police were involved. They said he had a temper, that he lashed out when he felt disrespected. Teachers wrote things like unreachable, defiant, detached. High school didn't help. He barely attended. He dropped out by 16. Around this time, his younger brother Darren was just starting elementary school. Dana was raising 2 sons on 2 different paths, one full of promise, the other full of rage. By 17, Darren was in deep, caught stealing from a neighbor's shed, possession of stolen firearms. Police reports mentioned gang affiliation, though the evidence was murky. But what wasn't murky was the pattern. A mother calling the police on her own child, not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. One incident ended with Darren punching a hole through a wall, another with him threatening to kill himself. Each time, Dana refused to give up on him. She begged officers not to press charges, pleaded with judges for leniency. She took parenting classes, therapy, medication. Nothing worked. At 21, it happened. Darren was arrested for breaking and entering, felony larceny, possession of a firearm by a felon. It wasn't just one incident. It was a spree. 4 separate break-ins across Wilson County, 2 of them while the homeowners were inside. The court labeled him a high-risk repeat offender. The judge gave him a 3-year sentence. Dana cried in court. Darren, just 12 at the time, sat in the back, silent. In prison, Darren's record didn't improve. Fights, contraband, isolation. He became colder, more withdrawn, more unpredictable. Psychologists who later reviewed his behavior would point out the obvious: unchecked rage, antisocial behavior, detachment from consequences, a dangerous cocktail brewing just beneath the surface. But the state didn't flag him for psychological intervention. No therapy, no supervision plan, just time served, and a door unlocked. And so, on March 25, 2025, Darren Jenkins walked out of prison. No job, no plan, no home. except one. He went back to Snowden Drive, back to the house where his baby brother now slept in the room he used to call his own, back to the mother who still believed in him. But he didn't return as a son. He returned as something else. Coming up, the family reunion, the smiles, the photos, the quiet moments that hinted at something darker. We'll dissect the 6 days between Daron's release and the massacre that would follow. March 25th, 2025, a Monday, the kind of morning where everything feels possible again. Dana Jenkins was up before dawn. She cooked a full breakfast. Eggs, grits, biscuits from scratch. She ironed her best outfit, put on earrings, sprayed her favorite perfume, not for a date, not for a party, but because she was going to see her son walk free. She told friends it felt like getting him back from the dead. And in a way, it was. The reunion wasn't dramatic. There were no tears, no embraces, just a simple hug, a long, quiet hug in the prison parking lot. Daron didn't say much. He looked thinner, older, harder, but Dana didn't care. He was home. That's all that mattered. The first 2 days were quiet, peaceful even. Dana showed Daron his old room, still intact, posters, books, even the little basketball trophy he won in 8th grade. She gave him space. She gave him love. She gave him the benefit of the doubt. And Daron, he played the part. He helped her with groceries, played video games with Darren, sat silently during dinner, never raised his voice, never raised his hands, not once. But something wasn't right. Neighbors said they saw Daron pacing the backyard late at night, smoking, staring off, talking to himself. Once he stayed outside in the cold for nearly 2 hours. No coat, just standing there. And then there were the locks. On the second night, Darren told a friend something odd. He said, quote, "My brother keeps locking the door to the bathroom when no one's in there." And when Dana asked Daron about it, he laughed, said he just needed privacy, said prison made him paranoid. She let it go. By the 4th day, Dana organized something small. Just a few family members, some cousins, a cake that said "Fresh Start," a playlist of Daron's favorite old-school R&B songs. They played cards, they laughed, pictures were taken. In one photo, Daron is smiling, genuinely. Dana's arm is around him. Darren is off to the side, flashing a peace sign. It looks normal. But less than 72 hours after that photo was taken, 2 of them would be dead. The very next morning, things changed. Daron began pacing again, snapping at Darren for touching his phone, whispering under his breath at dinner. Dana chalked it up to adjustment, said re-entry was hard, that prison changes people. She wasn't wrong, but what she didn't realize was that it hadn't just changed him, it had devoured him. On the 5th day, Daron left the house for several hours without telling anyone. He returned with nothing. No bags, no receipts. But he had something in his eyes. Dana later told a coworker, something felt different in him that night, like he wasn't really here anymore. She wasn't paranoid. She was right. The final 24 hours of Dana and Darren Jenkins' lives began with dinner and a movie in the living room. A night of laughter, of lightness, of a mother still believing her son was healing. But Daron wasn't healing. He was planning. Coming up, the 6th day, the blood-soaked morning that changed everything. The screams, the silences, the brutal, cold unraveling of a family who never saw it coming. March 30th, 2025, the 6th day, the last day. It began like any other morning in the Jenkins household. A quiet Saturday, birds chirping, sunlight through the blinds, a pot of coffee half brewed on the kitchen counter. But somewhere between sunrise and 9:15 a.m., time stopped. Dana was in the kitchen folding laundry on the table. Darren was still upstairs scrolling through his phone, texting a friend about a PlayStation tournament later that afternoon. Darren, he was already up, already dressed, already watching. Neighbors say they saw him outside just after 6:45 a.m., wearing all black, gloves, hoodie pulled up, pacing the driveway. When he came back inside, everything changed. No one heard the first scream. Police later determined Dana Jenkins was attacked from behind. A blow to the head, swift, violent. She was dragged into the living room face down. There were signs of struggle, bruises on her arms, broken fingernails. She fought for her life. Darren didn't use a gun. He used his hands and his fists and a knife taken from the kitchen. She was stabbed several times. And then silence. Upstairs, Darren heard the noise, the scuffle, the crash of a coffee mug hitting the floor. He came down the stairs slowly, calling out, "Mom!" And then he saw her. And then he saw his brother. Darren didn't have time to scream, didn't have time to run. He turned, maybe to flee, maybe to fight. We'll never know. But Darren caught him. Police believe Darren was stabbed several times in the chest, once in the neck. He collapsed near the bottom of the stairs. His phone was still clutched in his hand. At exactly 9:19 a.m., a neighbor dialed 911. "I heard something. Loud, like furniture being thrown. Then it got real quiet. Do you see anyone outside?" "No, but their front door, it's open." Police were dispatched immediately. 9 minutes later, 2 patrol officers arrived at 1702 Snowden Drive Southeast. They entered cautiously, no sign of forced entry. But what they found inside was a slaughter. Dana's body lay face down by the couch, blood soaked into the carpet. Darren's body was half on the stairs, his eyes still open. The knife was found in the sink, rinsed, poorly, but the water was still running. And Darren? Gone. A neighbor's doorbell cam would later reveal Darren Jenkins leaving the house calmly. Hoodie up, no blood visible, carrying what looked like a black gym bag. He didn't run. He didn't panic. He just walked. Within the hour, yellow tape surrounded the house. Reporters circled, and Wilson, North Carolina, changed forever. 2 lives taken. A mother who believed too much, a brother who never stood a chance. And Darren Jenkins? Vanished. Coming up, the manhunt begins. The clues Darren left behind, the chilling texts, the cryptic social media post, and the capture that finally brought this nightmare to a halt. March 31st, 2025. A day that began with unspeakable tragedy in Wilson, North Carolina. The bodies of Dana Jenkins and her 15-year-old son, Darren Cox, were discovered in their home, victims of a brutal double homicide. The suspect, Dana's eldest son, Darren Jenkins, recently released from prison. Upon arriving at the scene, the officers found no signs of forced entry. The home was eerily quiet, the only sounds coming from the distant hum of neighborhood life continuing unaware. Inside, the grim discovery was made. Dana and Darren, both lifeless, their lives violently taken. With Darren Jenkins unaccounted for, authorities immediately initiated a manhunt. Information was sparse, but urgency was paramount. The community, shocked and grieving, was also on edge, knowing a suspected killer was at large. Details surrounding Jenkins' apprehension remain limited. However, reports confirm that he was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. He is currently being held at the Wilson County Jail without bond. The community of Wilson is left grappling with the horror of the events. Dana Jenkins was remembered as a kind and caring individual, always smiling, always supportive. Darren, a student at Bedingfield High School, was known for his respectful demeanor and aspirations to become a pastor. Their sudden and violent deaths have left an indelible mark on all who knew them. As the legal process unfolds, many questions remain unanswered. What led to this unimaginable act? Could it have been prevented? The community seeks closure, justice, and understanding in the wake of such profound loss. The murders of Dana Jenkins and Darren Cox didn't just destroy a home. They shook an entire town. Wilson, North Carolina, a tight-knit community with quiet streets and Southern pride, became a crime scene, and its people became witnesses to a horror they never imagined would unfold in one of their own homes. 3 days after the killings, dozens gathered outside 1802 Snowden Drive. Candles lined the sidewalk, teddy bears, handwritten cards, a photo of Darren in his junior varsity jersey, a printed quote from Dana's Facebook page, "Love your people. You never know when you'll say goodbye." They sang, they prayed, they cried, and they asked, why? At Bedingfield High School, Monday morning was silent. Darren's desk sat empty, his locker taped over with flowers and notes. "You were always so chill. You made us laugh. Rest easy, bro." Counselors were brought in, teachers cried in class. Some students didn't come to school for days. It wasn't just that a classmate had died. It was how. Co-workers from the nursing home where Dana worked described her as a light, the type of woman who'd sneak you coffee on a hard day, who'd stay after her shift to help you finish yours. One nurse said, "She gave so much to everyone, even when she didn't have much herself." Her church held a memorial. They spoke of forgiveness, of grace, but you could hear it in their voices. They were broken. And then came the outrage, not just at Darren, but at the system. Why was he released? Had there been warning signs? Was anyone watching him? Why wasn't he evaluated more closely before re-entering society? Local politicians issued statements. Advocates for criminal justice reform clashed with critics of early parole. Radio shows lit up with calls. This could have been prevented. As news of the murders spread beyond Wilson, the story caught fire online. Facebook threads exploded. TikTokers posted theories. Some blamed the mother for letting him in. Others defended her. Many mourned. As of now, Darren Jenkins is being held without bond. He faces 2 counts of first-degree murder. His next court appearance is scheduled, but no trial date has been set. Prosecutors have not ruled out seeking the death penalty. And while the justice system moves slowly, the grief doesn't. 2 innocent lives ended before their time. A mother who believed in second chances. A brother who just wanted to play video games and make it to church on Sunday. And a community still trying to breathe through the shock. Some tragedies fade quickly. This one hasn't. This one lingers. What really happened in the days leading to the murders? What did Darren post online before vanishing? And who else may have seen the warning signs, but stayed silent? When someone commits an unthinkable act, the questions come fast. Why? How? Could this have been stopped? And most haunting of all, were the signs always there? Let's start with what we know. Darren Jenkins was no stranger to the law. Court records show a history of charges: theft, drug possession, assault. In 2020, he was convicted of felony firearm possession, sentenced, incarcerated, released. But that wasn't the full story. Between 2018 and 2024, there were at least 6 police interactions involving Darren, some for minor infractions, others involving violent outbursts. A few were dismissed, others ended in probation. A pattern, spotted, documented, but never stopped. Dana Jenkins, his mother, once confided in a close friend that her son heard things sometimes, that he would go dark for days, not sleeping, not talking, that he'd say God was speaking through the static of the TV. But he wouldn't get help, or maybe couldn't. In North Carolina, involuntary psychiatric holds require clear danger to self or others. And by the time it was clear, 2 lives were already gone. Just 2 days before the killings, March 29th, Darren made a chilling Facebook post. "Don't trust the ones who smile the most. Even Jesus flipped tables." Beneath it, a string of vague replies. "You good, bro? Chill out. Lumphao. But no one took it seriously. Why would they? Social media is full of cryptic drama. Except, this wasn't just drama. It was a warning. After his arrest, police seized Dairon's phone. Buried in a deleted notes app was a document, never sent, never posted, but written less than 24 hours before the crime. I see the lies behind her teeth. She prays over me but don't believe. This world fake, this house fake. Maybe God don't care if I fix it. There's no signature, no clear intent. But the bitterness, the resentment, it seeped from every word. Dairon was released from prison on March 25th, 6 days before the murders. Was he evaluated before being placed back into society? Did anyone check his mental health? Why was he allowed to return to the same environment he had once lashed out in? Officials have declined to comment publicly, citing an ongoing investigation. But quietly, lawmakers are already drafting a proposal. A bill that would require mental health screenings before any early release. It's hard to blame a mother who just wanted to believe in her child. Dana had a heart too big, too hopeful. She wanted redemption. She wanted Dairon to see that love could save him. But maybe he saw that love as control, or betrayal, or worse, as weakness. She never saw it coming, neither did Dairon. The signs were there, not loud, not flashing, but there. A criminal past, fractured thoughts, cryptic words, a storm brewing behind familiar eyes. And in the end, the ones who loved him the most paid the price. Next, the arrest footage, the courtroom silence, the moment Dairon faced the world and said nothing. We'll take you into the trial, every glance, every gasp, every unbearable second. April 10th, 2025. The courthouse in Wilson County, North Carolina. Packed, silent, every seat taken. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but what happened behind those closed doors would stay with everyone who witnessed it. At 9:47 a.m., Darren Jenkins entered the courtroom, shackled at the waist, flanked by 2 deputies. He didn't look up. Wore a pale gray jumpsuit, looked thinner than his booking photo. Hollow-eyed. His face unreadable, not remorse, not anger, just blank. In the front row, Dana's sister, Darren's football coach, a girl from his class who never said a word, just clutched a crumpled piece of notebook paper with his name on it. The judge read the charges. 2 counts of first-degree murder, use of a firearm in commission of a felony, aggravated assault with intent to kill. Dairon said nothing, didn't flinch, didn't blink. When asked to state his plea, he leaned forward, eyes low, and whispered, "Not guilty." There was a sound from the gallery, a sharp inhale, quickly muffled. Dana's sister covered her mouth. A man in the back shook his head, muttering, "Liar." A bailiff asked for silence. The prosecution outlined their case: DNA on the weapon, Dairon's own fingerprints on the doorknob, surveillance footage placing him near the home minutes before the time of the crime. A deleted note recovered from his phone, witness testimony from a neighbor who heard shouting, then 2 cracks like firecrackers, then nothing. His public defender argued for diminished capacity. Mr. Jenkins has a documented history of untreated schizophrenia. He was not in control of his actions. This was not murder. This was a psychiatric break. But the prosecution snapped back. He walked to that house and took away 2 lovely lives and went away. This was no breakdown. This was execution period. You could feel the weight of every eye in that room. A teacher who once gave Dairon a detention, a pastor who once prayed with Dana, a neighbor who had once lent Dairon a pair of jumper cables. Now all witnesses, not to the crime, but to what was left behind. At one point during a recess, Dairon looked up, just once, just long enough to meet the eyes of his aunt. She didn't speak, just stared, her lips pressed tight, her eyes red and full of questions. He looked away first. A silence heavier than a gunshot filled the courtroom. Due to the gravity of the charges and the mental health components, the trial was postponed for psychological evaluation. Experts will determine if Daron is competent to stand trial. He remains in custody at a secure psychiatric facility under suicide watch. The case has not yet gone to full trial, but the town is already carrying its verdict. No one ever imagined they'd see a boy raised in their church sit in that courtroom, accused of this. No one ever thought they'd bury a son and a mother in the same week. But justice doesn't move at the speed of grief. Next, a return to the beginning. Who was Daron Jenkins before the system? What happened in his childhood, and how did the boy with the quiet eyes and high GPA become a symbol of tragedy? The descent begins. We often think of killers as monsters, born with blood on their hands. But Daron Jenkins wasn't always the face on a mugshot. Before the courtroom, before the gun, before the blood, there was a boy and his silence. Daron was born in Wilson, North Carolina in 1998, a quiet baby, barely cried. His mother, Dana, called him her little statue. He learned to read by age 4. Teachers praised his handwriting. But he never liked crowds, never liked hugs, never liked loud voices. By middle school, Daron had changed, not dramatically, not enough to raise alarms, but enough to notice. He stopped answering questions in class, started talking to himself when he thought no one was watching. He drew pictures of eyes, repeated symbols, numbers. He got in a fight with a classmate who said angels weren't real. He screamed that they're watching us. Teachers reported odd behavior. The school counselor recommended therapy. By high school, Daron was pulling away from everything. Friends, grades, even his family. He failed 2 classes, was caught vaping in the bathroom, got suspended for shoving a teacher's aide. At 17, he was arrested for shoplifting, just a hoodie and headphones from a Walmart. When asked why, he said nothing, not a word. The officer on duty later said, "He looked at me like I wasn't real." After the murders, police found a box under Daron's childhood bed. Inside were folded pages, letters, dozens of them. They were dated over years, some written in crayon, some torn in half, none ever sent. In 2020, Daron was arrested for felony gun possession. He served time, got out in 2024. For a brief moment, things looked stable. But something happened that winter. Family friends say he was denied a job at a factory, that he came home one day and locked himself in the basement for 48 hours. When he came out, he was different. Cold, detached, and quiet. That same silence from when he was a baby, but now it echoed with something far darker. Daron Jenkins wasn't born a killer. He was born broken, in places no one could see. And as the cracks widened, no one, not his mother, not his teachers, not the system, reached in deep enough to pull him back. He drowned quietly, and when he came back to the surface, he took 2 lives with him. What happens when a community has to live with its scars? We returned to Wilson days later to see what's changed and what never will. Ghosts don't just haunt houses, they haunt memories. Wilson, North Carolina, population 47,000. But after the murders of Dana and Daron Jenkins, it felt like a ghost town. Not because the streets were empty, but because of what was missing. A mother, a son, a future that would never arrive. Dana's house was boarded up. Crime scene tape had long been removed, but the shadow still lingered. Neighbors refused to walk their dogs past it. Kids dared each other to touch the front porch. No one did. One neighbor said she still hears knocking from the inside, always around 3 a.m., always 3 knocks. Another swore they saw a boy standing in the upstairs window, but the house has been empty since the day they were killed. At Daron's middle school, his desk remains untouched. Teachers placed sunflowers in his chair every week for a month. His locker, covered in sticky notes, messages from classmates, drawings of hearts and footballs. Miss you, D. Rest easy, number 22. See you in the stars. One girl wrote, "You were the only one who smiled at me when I sat alone." At Mount Olive Church, there's one seat in the choir Dana always stood in, every Sunday, same spot. Now they leave it empty. A white rose sits where her Bible used to. Her voice, once the loudest during praise, now lives in echoes, in memory. Wilson became divided. Some wanted justice. Some wanted mercy. Others wanted the whole case to disappear. Darren's old friend said it couldn't have been him. Darren's coach said he saw this coming. At the local diner, arguments broke out. One woman was asked to leave for wearing a Justice for Darren shirt. Another was fired for saying Darren needed help, not prison. Wounds reopened every time his name was spoken. The town gathered on Boone Street. Hundreds showed up. Candles in hand, t-shirts with Dana and Darren's faces. A local pastor read their favorite psalms. Darren's football coach spoke through tears. Dana's sister passed out envelopes with photos of the two of them. One in a Halloween costume. One baking cupcakes. One just hugging. They released 22 white balloons into the night sky. One for each year Dana raised her boy. One for each jersey number he wore. And yet, questions remain. Why wasn't Darren given mental health intervention earlier? Why did no one check on him that final week? Why didn't Dana see the danger in her own home? The why is the loudest ghost of all. Grief never leaves. It just rearranges the furniture of the heart. And in Wilson, every cracked sidewalk and empty chair whispers a name. Dana. Darren. Darren. Some ghosts haunt the living, not out of malice, but because they never got to say goodbye. Next, we revisit the psychology, experts, therapists, a deeper dive into the condition Darren may have lived with in silence for over a decade. Was this the face of evil, or the final cry of a boy no one ever truly saw? We've seen the crime, we've felt the aftermath, but there's one place we haven't yet gone: the mind of Darren Jenkins. Some say he was evil, others mentally ill. But is there a difference? And if there is, how do we tell before it's too late? Darren underwent a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation after his arrest in March 2024. The findings? Disturbing. Subject displays signs consistent with paranoid schizophrenia. History of delusional thinking, auditory hallucinations, and intense emotional detachment. Long-term untreated psychosis suspected. But these weren't sudden. They were cumulative. Darren was unraveling for years. Darren never received a formal diagnosis as a child. In 2015, his high school counselor recommended mental health screening. The referral was ignored. In 2018, during his short stint in jail for shoplifting, he told a nurse he saw faces in mirrors and felt like he was watching someone else wear his body. No psychiatric follow-up was ever done. Among the evidence retrieved from his bedroom was a black leather notebook. Inside were fragments of thought, patterns, numbers, drawings. Psychiatrists call this thought disorder, a common symptom in paranoid schizophrenia. Doctors and forensic psychologists reviewed Darren's case. Here's what they said. There are unmistakable signs of late-onset schizophrenia. He had what we call command hallucinations, voices that instruct behavior, often violent. If untreated, they can take full control. But the legal system is not designed to treat mental illness, only to punish its consequences. So where did the system break? Was it the overworked school counselor? The overwhelmed mother? Or was it all of us, refusing to see what's uncomfortable? In the end, no diagnosis brought Dana or Darren back. No label softened what Darren did. But understanding, it matters, because somewhere right now, There's another Darren, staring at a wall, hearing a voice, being called a weirdo, and just waiting for his moment to break. Next, we head into court, the trial of Daron Jenkins, a community divided, a mother's face on the witness stand, a son on trial for erasing his own blood. Justice isn't always clean. Sometimes it bleeds. February 24th, 2025. The state of North Carolina versus Daron Jenkins officially began. The courthouse was packed. Rows of family, reporters, activists, protesters on both sides. Some came for justice, others for closure. Some just came to see a monster in a hoodie. Daron Jenkins entered the courtroom wearing a tan jail-issued jumpsuit, shackles around his ankles, unshaven, blank expression. He didn't look at anyone, not the judge, not the jury, not the family sitting behind the prosecution's table, the ones who once called him nephew, cousin, brother. The prosecution opened strong. You will hear how the defendant, with malice and full mental faculties, executed his own mother and younger brother. This was not an accident. This was not a breakdown. It was premeditated bloodshed. The defense struck back. This is not a case of evil. This is a case of failure by the system. You'll hear from experts who will testify that Daron Jenkins was legally insane at the time of the killings. First to take the stand, a friend of the victim, and she began. She loved him. She fought for him every day, I told her. I told her to send him somewhere. She said, no, he's my son. He just needs love. She was wrong. She broke down midway. The judge called for recess. Even the defense didn't argue it was sane. They argued it was illness. A forensic psychologist for the defense testified Daron suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, untreated and misdiagnosed. He truly believed his family had been replaced. This is known as Capgras delusion. It's terrifying for the victim and those around them. But then came the prosecution's expert. He knew right from wrong. He hid the weapon. He erased messages. That's not psychosis. That's planning. Daron Jenkins was called to the stand. A collective inhale swept the courtroom. He spoke slowly, carefully, eyes mostly down. He wept once, just once, when they showed him a photo of Daron, age 12, wearing his jersey, hugging Daron's leg. He did nothing but bow his head. The final day, both attorneys delivered closing arguments that electrified the courtroom. The prosecutor's voice was heard. You may feel pity, but justice isn't pity. This was murder, premeditated, calculated, and cold. You cannot excuse the unexcusable. The defense cut it in immediately. Punishment without understanding is cruelty. And if we condemn the mentally ill, what does that make us? Then, the jury left the room. For hours, they deliberated, arguments, tears. One juror reportedly asked for a Bible, and then they returned. The verdict was read. Guilty on all counts, but not without recommendation of psychiatric incarceration instead of death. Daron Jenkins was sentenced to life in a secure psychiatric facility, no chance of parole. The courtroom erupted. Some cried in relief, others in anger. Another screamed, "He should have burned." Justice was served, but not everyone agreed whose justice it was. Next, the legacy. How the town remembers. The laws that changed, and why this case still shows up in textbooks, TikToks, and trauma clinics. The Daron Jenkins case didn't end with the verdict. It started a new war. The case of Daron Jenkins didn't end at the gavel's strike. It rippled through families, policies, classrooms, and screens. A small North Carolina town became a national symbol of missed warnings, of mental illness ignored, and of what happens when reality fractures. Teachers are now trained in trauma cues. Students get anonymous mental health check-ins. It's not perfect, but it's a start. For the first time in state history, Mental illness wasn't just part of the conversation. It was part of the legislation. But not all ripples heal. Some distort. Within days of the verdict, TikTok accounts began romanticizing Daron. Edits of him in court, slow-motion mugshots, captioned, "He just needed love." This wasn't just tone-deaf, it was dangerous. Because the more we mythologize monsters, the harder it is to prevent the next one. Juanila Cornegay, Dana's cousin, refused all media interviews, except one. "I forgive Daron, but forgiveness isn't freedom. He needs help, and my sister and nephew deserve peace. I won't let them be hashtags. I'll make them legacies." This story wasn't about a killer. It was about all the cracks he fell through. It was about a mother's love, and where it wasn't enough. It was about a boy who begged for help in silence, and screamed only when it was too late. It was about a justice system that had to choose between punishment and understanding. And it was about us, the ones watching, scrolling, analyzing, hoping that we'll never find ourselves in a story like this, and praying we'd see the signs if we did. If you found value in this documentary, subscribe to this channel, share this story. Let the memory of Dana and Daron Jenkins fuel more awareness and more action. Because stories like these, they don't end, they echo, and what we do next becomes the next chapter. Subscribe now for more true crime documentaries, real cases, real consequences, and the raw truths no one else dares to tell. In memory of Dana and Daron Jenkins, may their story change one more life.